Welcome, everyone, to another episode of
It's hard.
I'm gonna start that again.
I'm gonna leave it in too. So,
I will own that. Um, well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Transcending Humanity podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Now, I'm a new host to the Transcending Humanity family. So my name is Rachel Hanson. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you. Now, I'm new to the show. So just a little bit about me. My full-time day job is in public higher education. So outside of being an advocacy-based individual, I'm also spending a lot of time talking to first-generation college students about how to college.
how do you college? Fuck if I know.
I mean, right. I think I've been around for a while, so I think maybe I have a few little nuggets of wisdom to pass along. But right. So outside of advocacy, if you have questions about going to college in America, like let me know, because I'm here for that. Perhaps not shockingly, I do have quite an educational background. I have a bachelor's degree in gender studies, which has wound up surprising to me now, but I'm also very grateful to be super helpful as a parent to 3 young kids, because we have one who's autistic, and our cultural ideas of gender like basically make no sense. And neurotypical people just go, yeah, okay, I'm gonna roll with this, but neurodiverse people are I don't think that my 7-year-old knows this word, but they're basically going, what the fuck? Like, what are we? But right, like having that gender studies background is also really helpful for my son.
This day and age too.
Right. Well, right. Like we're trying to we have right now, right, 2 daughters and a son. So right, like kind of getting away from toxic masculinity, like you need a lot of education to raise a boy to not be awful.
A lot of deprogramming.
Right. So we're deprogramming ourselves, so we never have to program him in the first place.
Deprogram, decolonize.
Yep. 100%. I also have a master's degree in public and nonprofit administration. So like when I'm doing advocacy, I'm thinking a lot about how government systems intersect with like our regular lives as citizens. I also, right, like that wasn't just enough, right? Like I'm doing all these other things. I am also a podcast producer. I co-host another show called What the Finance, where we talk loosely about principles of personal finance, but there's a policy component to that too, because I think, as we'll talk about a little bit in this episode, right? Like you can't budget your way out of poverty.
It's impossible.
No, it doesn't matter how good your budget is. If you don't have any money, then it's like, so what? And then I produce a show where I'm just behind the scenes called Get Uncomfortable, with a biracial Black man, and we talk a lot about existing as a person of color in America and how that shows up in your religious life and in your professional life and on all the things. And I'm also the editor-in-chief of a magazine by and for women who work in podcasting.
So you're pretty busy.
Yeah, just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. So
yeah, I'm
add
really
this to your repertoire.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about me as we're jumping into anti-corporate activism.
Cool, awesome. Yeah. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. We'll be spending a little bit of time in this episode just talking about kind of different facets of anti-corporate activism. And I'm also joined today by our executive producer, Vanessa Joy. Now, Vanessa, you, of course, are not new to the listeners, right? This is,
I would hope not.
Episode 23?
21.
21.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was an odd number.
Yeah.
But because I'm new to the show, I was wondering if you could just kind of introduce yourself, right? Like if somebody was new, what would you want folks to know about you?
Okay, well, that's probably good because we do have new listeners all the time. I'm Vanessa Joy. I am, as she said, the executive producer of the show and also the primary host now as well. I am a transgender woman. I have been transitioning since November 4th of 2021. By the time you listen to this, I'll hopefully have my freshly installed vagina, which, yay. That's supposed to be installed on August 28th unless something goes wrong. Um, and let's see here. Actually, no, this episode comes out before that, so ignore that. Um, my brain doesn't work. People that listen to the show. Yeah, I am. I like to call myself a empathic leader. I lead by listening, and I'm just here. I'm an exhausted parent.
Well, maybe this episode will actually be shorter than an hour because we were both
Exhausted parents.
exhausted parents.
Yeah, yeah.
So and I just hopefully this is not insensitive, but you describing your vaginal surgery as installing it like it's a kitchen appliance or something
Mhm.
like that just made me laugh
It's an
on the
upgrade.
inside. And now you know that
Yeah. Well, like the factory equipment was installed incorrectly. I got a stick
right.
shift and I was supposed to get an automatic. So I'm just taking it back in for warranty work just 42 years later.
Well, I mean, it's a
Hmm.
lifetime warranty. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's great. Um all right. So this was actually not on purpose, but it's super beautiful for our conversation about anti-corporate activism. My day job is in academia, and so I really like textbook definitions, but those aren't always super helpful. So, Vanessa, on your side of things, I'm wondering, like, what springs to mind for you when you think about like that phrase, anti-corporate activism, like if anything.
What springs to mind for me, for someone that doesn't know anything about it, is pushing back against corporate overreach, corporate greed, corporate interference in our politics, which is absolutely brutally horrible right now, especially living in Ohio, where we just struck down issue one, which was put on by corporations to make it so minority rule would have been the way of the game for voting. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, I don't know how far off I am with that, but
Yeah, no, I mean, well, and with the voting thing, right? Like we're already so close to minority rule
yeah.
anyway. And that could be a whole other episode. So I'm gonna
Hmm.
zip my lips on that.
We'll have you back for that one.
Right, I'll be here. Um, um, but I mean, honestly, you're exactly right. Right, like kind of that textbook idea of anti-corporate activism is the idea that what the private sector needs to succeed is generally bad for humanity. And
Yeah.
so kind of anything that you can do to push against that, it kind of falls under that umbrella of
Hmm.
anti-corporate activism. And I think sometimes and I have thought of this as like a very visible but terrible example in the media is when people are like burning jerseys or burning books and things like that because right the corporations don't actually care, right? Like you
No, they
bought the
don't care.
book, you bought the jersey,
The
they don't
money's been
care that
spent.
you're wrecking it
Yeah.
because they have your money. That's a really present example of what we might see every day as an example of anti-corporate activism,
Hmm.
but it's kind of a sucky example because
It's what makes the news, though. So
it is right. It's like there was like one group of women in the 70s who had a bra burning demonstration, and now suddenly everybody who's a feminist
bra
is like
burning.
bra burning.
We've all
And
heard that.
like no, that was like 20 women one time that
Hmm.
did that, right? It's but we still think about it.
But media, because guess what? Media is corporate as well. So
Right. um
we're just fucked every which way.
um so but to me, as we're kind of like thinking about this, right, anti-corporate activism also translates in my mind, right, to queer joy. which I think might seem a little bit weird.
Not to me.
Okay. Because when I am thinking about, I feel like you're gonna have all these very long pauses to edit out maybe later.
Oh, I'm used to it.
I don't
I
know.
do it all the time. Lisa does it all the time. That because I actually don't listen to the episodes when I edit them for the most part because they just take too long and I don't have that kind of time. So I just go through and I look for pauses. I cut those out and then
And
it
that's
goes
it.
live, whatever it is. So
That makes sense. But right, it's worth thinking about, right, kind of this new, this is an audio podcast, but like in quotes, right? New,
there's a video version of this
like,
as well. It goes on
oh,
YouTube.
there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I really was just thinking it was audio, and that's totally fine. But anyway, um, right, we have these corporations that want to seem like they're with it, right? That they are standing up for trans rights and for queer rights and for like the diversity of humanity.
Hmm.
But the way that we often see that happening, right, is through like a trauma lens. And I think on its own, right, like that's not like standing up for the little guy is not necessarily a bad thing,
Mm-mm.
right? Um, like one of the very first examples of like corporate allyship that came out really publicly was in the late 80s. The Walt Disney Company partnered with, sorry, I'm looking through my notes. Uh, I didn't actually write the name of the partner organization. That's
They partnered
terrible.
with some people.
Yeah. Well, no, so the Walt Disney Corporation partnered with, I think, um, I have the essay that I was referring to. So now I'm just going to pull out my book. Um, they partnered with the AIDS Project Los Angeles
Oh, okay.
to fundraise for AIDS research, which, right, like on its own, right, like fantastic,
Yeah.
right? Like then and now, more research and more money is
Hmm.
needed
It's a crisis. It still is.
for, yes, exactly. But it really is, right? Like corporations coming in and going, oh, oh, you guys, we can help you. And it's very paternalistic,
Hmm.
right?
White saviorism.
I mean, basically,
Yeah.
and that's part of my tirade for a little bit later, is that a lot of this is also rooted in colonialism,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because like colonial, right, like how we view gender expression is very rooted in like European Christianity.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we
and
went
that's
over
all
that. Was I think it was last week with Shay Barnes.
right.
It's so Eurocentric.
Right, right. Like it, in my opinion, we wouldn't have so many people in gender crisis if we actually lived in a culture that just accepted people as they were showing up in the world. Um, but I right. But right, like that's very much the vibe, right? Like,
Hmm.
okay, like I'm gonna do this good thing, but like mostly it's for me to feel like I'm doing good in the world while I ravage the planet.
Pretty
Um,
much. Pretty much. Look at this
right.
shiny thing over here. So you don't see what we're doing over here.
I mean, pretty much. Um, Now when I am, so I'm based just a little bit south of Minneapolis in
Hmm.
Minnesota. And so when I think about like queer and shiny together, I'm also thinking about one of the biggest pride parades in the country, right? Like it is actually very shiny, which is
Hmm.
fun, but then we're not talking about all the other stuff. So I had a thought, I lost it. Maybe it will come back.
I hate that. It'll either come at 3 in the
It'll come
morning
back,
or
maybe
not at
it won't.
all. Yeah.
But yeah, so like we really are seeing kind of this very paternalistic idea of like the corporations are going to save us. But and I don't know if any of our listeners are fans of classic soft rock, but I am a fan of classic soft rock. I think about anti-corporate activism probably more than it's healthy for any like single individual to think about it. But
We all like to have our
um,
passions. So.
well, and I'm also right, like both of us are parents.
Hmm.
We're raising kids in a dying planet.
Isn't it fun?
That's great. So some of it to me is like, okay, like what, like to me, a big piece of this is environmental.
Mm-hmm.
And in case you weren't listening and not picking up on that, now you know. Like for me, a big piece of this is environmental. And so a lot of it is like, okay, how are we interacting with these organizations? But back to the music. When I am thinking about this, one of my all-time favorite songs is from the band Boston, and it's actually called Corporate America.
Hmm.
I'm a huge nerd, but it's really good. I really like that song.
I think I know it. It's one of those, I
Uh,
suck with the names of songs, but if I heard
right.
it.
It's like, uh, I, I will sing it, but I might not have some water because my cup is empty. Um,
Your cup does not
uh,
runneth over.
no. Well, I forgot to take my allergy meds today, so I've also just like
Mm.
my mouth is dry. But it's corporate America. Who's gonna save us? Who's gonna save us now?
I might have heard. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, but that is a big piece of it, right? Like you're doing all these things to destroy the planet and to
Mhm.
destroy humanity. But like with the Vanessa, your comment earlier, right, about the look at that shiny thing over
Mhm.
there, right? In the song, one of their lines is the sales pitch for progress at a dizzying pace.
Mhm.
In Transcending Humanity, like we are super for progress,
Mhm.
right? Like
We're a very progressive
that's what we're
podcast.
about.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. But I also think that it's fair to say that the private sector, right, in the United States and pretty much everywhere else, is also super interested in really shoving things down our throats. And you can take that however you want to take it. Um,
Giggity.
to make that quick buck, but without bringing about the lasting change that
Hmm.
we really need. So, like, so then you do get people who just feel like this agenda is being shoved at them and they don't have time to think or question, right? Because it's just because we have these corporations who are being really pushy and pitting us against each other while they just get richer.
The pitting against each other, that's such a major thing too. So
I
it's terrifying, but it takes the attention off of them.
right, right. Or it changes the conversation, right? Like right, like you have people who are saying, well, I'm not a bad person. I just really like crafting, and Hobby Lobby is the craft store that's close to me.
No.
Right, like okay, maybe just like order online through Michael's friend.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you know, like, you know, or you have people who, you know, by and large, right, like maybe their religious values are not generally toxic, but it's really important to them to support companies that are closed on Sundays.
Hmm.
Well, Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays. I mean,
Oh,
right, like
bigot bird.
so right. So then right, so then we do have people who are like, okay, so this is like a very closely held belief, and I appreciate this corporation is doing that. But because we're all on both, like on all the sides, right? Like we're whipped into this frenzy, right? Like the impulse is to go, I can't believe that you're buying your yarn at Hobby Lobby. You're a trash person.
I mean, I might be guilty of calling someone a trash person for doing that.
Somebody did call me a trash person just for saying that I was boycotting Hobby Lobby. I didn't tell anybody else to. I just so right,
Yeah,
like
you have the other side of the coin.
right.
No.
So uh but right, so we're getting pitted against each other. Everybody's feeling attacked. And then we're ultimately all less safe, right? And I think safety and then joy are the goals here.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm kind of bringing this in, right, like what can we do, like really, right? Because for just so many reasons, right? None of us are getting away from uh, private sector, like global capitalism, right? Like you live in a rural area and right, that one blue big box store is all that's like
Yeah, you're
that's where
stuck
you
with
can
it.
buy your groceries.
Mm-hmm. And I hate it.
Um, right. I mean, and really we've talked about this on the show before, but right, like a lot of our ideas of gender expression, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, cost a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like whether we're talking about surgery or um, clothing or hair dye or
Everything.
right, like the art that you choose to put up in your house that
Exactly.
right, like
Stickers we
all
put on our cars,
uh, yes, right, like at some point in the line, right, like there's not really any getting away from this whole thing completely, right? Like you can't just say like no way I'm gonna I don't know, I'm gonna grow all my own food, I'm not ever gonna go grocery shopping again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then like where are you buying your seeds? Are you getting fertilizer? Right, like
Yeah.
right, like there's all these, like just being real about it, right? Like it's not doable
Mm-mm.
at all. So then you go, okay, how do I make change from within? Right, like how am I doing this? And I think it really goes back to a second ago, like slow yourself down a little bit, right? Like think about why you're consuming the goods and services that you are consuming, right? Because really, like thoughtful decisions are like the worst thing that you could possibly be doing for corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they're relying on us to, I mean, and I would even consider them to be one of the good guys, but right, like Target is relying on you to walk in and think, okay, all I need today is a gallon of milk, and then getting distracted by the super awesome pride display that they have at the front of the store.
That they got rid of.
Yeah, my local Target did not, and I was very happy about that.
Ours, one of ours
But I
did,
bet
the
yours
other
did.
didn't. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's like Target used to be. I mean, I still go there over Walmart because I
Oh
have too
yeah.
long of a history with Walmart, but I don't like it either. But I have to, like, I don't have a job. I'm broke. I have to buy cheap stuff somewhere. So,
Well,
but
right. Like it's kind of a joke since COVID, right? But like we all need toilet paper. Like,
hmm
where are you going to go to buy that?
I know.
You're going to go to Target. Um,
Hmm.
right. So if you can slow down and go, hey, I'm not going to get, um, when I don't, like I'm in Minnesota and they still have like bikinis at the front of the store.
Hmm.
I'm like, you guys, it's the end of August.
No one's wearing those.
Nobody, right? Like it felt fall today. Like nobody's
Really.
wearing a
We're
bikini.
actually, Minnesota's
Um,
on my list of places to move. So
well, I'd love to have you.
I've heard good things.
It's I like living here. But but right, like don't go, oh hey, I'm gonna buy that clearance bikini. No, you
Hmm.
just go to the back of the store and you get the toilet paper and then you cruise on out. Right.
It's
Like
one of those figure out your needs versus your wants and focus on the
yes,
needs.
yes. But also acknowledge that those can be different, right? Um, like I am when it comes to safety as a woman, like I personally am probably about as safe as you can get, right? I'm a white, cisgendered, college educated woman living in the Midwest.
Hmm.
I don't need to put on like a big gender display for people to identify me as a woman and treat me accordingly.
You don't have to
Our
prove
trans
anything.
right, like our trans sisters do not have that luxury,
Mm-mm. No, we don't.
even a little bit.
No.
So, like Vanessa, what you need is completely different
Hmm.
from what I need
I don't
to
leave the house
exist
if I'm not
safely in
completely
the
made up.
world.
So,
Right. And like, right, like I have the luxury, like I have very sensitive skin, so I don't usually wear makeup.
mm,
And I have the luxury of being able to do that
yeah.
safely. Right. So be thoughtful for yourself, but also be thoughtful for other people.
Hmm.
So kind of like that, think about what you need and why you need it, and just forget about everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. Like we don't need the judgment. We
Mm-mm.
don't need any of that. And then I think with that slow down thoughtfulness piece too, I think it's also being thoughtful about who you are supporting.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're buying a gift for a friend, um, you know, maybe you want to um, so one of my kiddos is autistic, and so like Skechers
Sorry.
are the shoe.
Hmm.
Right, like Skechers shoes are the shoes for autistic folks. Honestly, maybe for my own sanity, I haven't actually ever looked into the company because like they're a sensory safe shoe,
Hmm.
so kind of it doesn't matter
I
sadly.
never knew
But
that.
hmm?
I never knew that. That's good to know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think, isn't it funny? Like neurodiverse people, we find each other.
Hmm.
And
Oh, yeah, we do.
almost every single one of my friends is neurodiverse, and Skechers are it.
I used to wear Skechers all the time. I haven't in a long time, but I also didn't know. I mean, I'm autistic as well, but I never knew that until 6 months ago. So, um,
Yeah, I
but
don't, it's hereditary. So like my daughter got diagnosed, and I'm like, okay, well, this is explaining a lot
yeah,
about the adults in the family. Um,
yeah,
but,
and a lot of trans people are autistic too. So,
yeah, I mean, it just turns out that um,
it's fun.
um, I had a thought and I lost it again. But right, like for example, if Skechers was going to partner with like a queer creator
Hmm.
for like a line of shoes, like you best believe that I would be in that store and I'd be
Yeah,
buying those shoes.
same.
Right. So like supporting queer creators, or if you're buying a piece of art, right? Like that's not something you need for survival. So
Mm-mm.
purchase your art from like a marginalized person,
At an
and
art
not
show.
in like a paternalistic way,
Yeah,
right? Because like that's what we do. It's those small decisions.
and buy them from small companies too. Like rather than go to, is Bed Bath and Beyond still a thing or did they close? I can't remember. But
Yeah, no, I was actually just on their website today randomly.
okay,
So
maybe they didn't. I thought something. But instead of like going buying your art there, go to a local art show or a local shop, and that way you're supporting both the shop and the artist. And those little things, I mean, it does make a difference. That's one of the best things you can do is keep your money local
right,
or
right. It
small,
really
you
is.
know. So
Yeah, I mean, isn't it funny how right like local has all these different definitions based on who you're talking to?
yeah, the problem is like it also is starting to get a bad connotation too, because then you start also thinking of the Trumpies, like, oh, you got to support small business and small business only, and they're, you know, owned by the Bible thumping Trumpers. So when I when I say support small business, I mean support progressive small business.
Right, right.
Don't go to your
um,
local Christian bookstore. Yeah.
right. But I think even that, right? Like with the thoughtfulness. A few months ago, I was doing a fellowship with um like an organization called Vote Run Lead that they train women to run for elected office.
Hmm.
Anyway, but we did a bunch of research on women who carry firearms on the campaign trail
Hmm.
as a safety thing in
Yeah.
rural areas. Like people will absolutely lose their minds if you go door knocking as a political candidate in a rural area. It's not safe.
No. No.
In right, largely a red state, but in Superior, Wisconsin, there is a feminist gun shop that supports women who are making firearms. and right, like does all the training and the licensing that you need to safely carry a gun, right? And you think, right, oh, guns, it's the Trumpers,
A lot of progressives have guns.
right? So like kind of be thoughtful about it
Hmm.
in that way too. Like I think it can be dangerous to equate like a product with a specific line of thinking
It's
when,
true.
right, like sometimes, right, like sometimes mascara is what keeps you safe,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's a sidearm that keeps you
Or
safe.
sometimes it's both.
Right, right.
A sidearm disguised as a mascara tube.
I don't think that many people watch season 2 of this, but Agent Carter on Disney Plus, um she had like a lipstick that like doubled as an explosive, and I was like,
Hmm.
see, this is something
Exactly. It's
that I
perfect.
could get behind.
Yeah.
Right, but I think my cover would be blown because I've yet to actually find a lipstick that doesn't make me want to like claw my lips off. So
Mm. It is kind of a sensory thing. So,
it's a challenge. But
hmm,
uh, anyway, I think back to the thought about supporting. It's also about supporting content creators
yes.
like us.
Hmm. We have a Patreon,
Who,
folks.
yes, we do. Um, so right, like supporting the messages that you actually want to hear out in the world,
Hmm.
because there are a lot of really incredible small and independent creators who aren't the big guys on either side that are doing really good work.
Hmm. Erin Reed, perfect example. So, I mean, she's getting bigger, but she started very grassroots.
Right,
And the trans community owes her such a debt because, I mean, her work has saved lives.
right.
And there's people like her, and there's a lot of people out there. A lot of content creators of all walks of life, really, that help, that do a lot of good for the world. So
I think those were, I feel like I kind of just monologued there for half an hour.
that's what happens when you host on the show. You just monologue.
So, but I am dry on thoughts. Do you have any other um,
I mean, you
thoughts
brought
to
up a
share?
really good point where if you're going out there, a lot of times you don't have a choice but to be a patron of the big corporations. Especially like as you said, there's a lot of people that live, the only place around them is a Walmart. Um, but so yeah, you're gonna have to spend your money, but you don't have to spend too much money, as she said. You go in there, you get your toilet paper, you get your toothbrush, and you get your groceries that you need, but you don't need to go and just start buying all the other stuff too, because that's what they want you to do. Like there's the meme about Target. You go into Target and you can't leave Target for under $200, no matter, even if you go in there to buy a pen. And we're all guilty of that. When you can, if you can buy stuff more locally, but put your money where you want your money to go, because it is your money. These the more the more money that these corporations get from us, the more power they have, and the only power that we have against them is our spending habits. So yeah, there can be boycotts called for a number of things here and there, but sometimes those only help it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Bud Light sales went up during that boycott, because a bunch of people were buying it just to destroy the product, and they're like, "Hey, great, you're buying our shit." You know,
Right,
it bad
right.
publicity is publicity, whether it's good or bad.
I think they did actually
I would
go
not be
up.
surprised. Yeah, it's just how it works. One thing you brought up, the bigot bird, and there's people close to me that continue to go to Chick-fil-A despite my pleas for them not to. And what they always say, and I can't get them to change their mind, is our us buying a $5 sandwich isn't going to make a difference. But the problem with that thought is, yes, it does, because you're not the only one saying that. There's all these other people saying that too. So many people know that Chick-fil-A is a horrible, horrible organization, but every single one you see is jam packed all day long, causing traffic jams. And they're relying on people to be like, well, my $5, what's it going to hurt? There's so many other chicken places to go, and Chick-fil-A isn't even that good. Wendy's and Arby's make a much better chicken sandwich, in my opinion. So, and are Wendy's and Arby's perfect either? No, but they haven't like actively tried to uh, exterminate queer people. So,
Hmm.
Chick-fil-A, money from Chick-fil-A went to conversion therapy, which
Yeah.
is torture.
Yeah.
So just like mind what you're doing. It's impossible to know everything about the backstory of a company, especially especially it's too hard to look it all up. But if you hear things that are verified, like about Chick-fil-A, uh, we ask that maybe you just pivot and try something else. So like, unfortunately, I still do go to Target, but I don't overspend there anymore. I go there because it's the thing around me where I can afford it. But Target really, really betrayed the queer community this Pride. So
It did.
it was they're beyond performative. As soon as shit started getting real, they stuff that we deal with day in day out, the hate we deal with day in day out, they get one little taste of it and they run. So
Yeah.
yeah, so just
Yeah.
mind what you're doing. Try to just do research on things that you want to buy. Try to find alternate sources for it. So there are many, many, many places to get things. So um, I like to like when it comes to buying gifts for people. That's something I actually do like to go out and shop at small places. Like for my best friend's birthday back in May, I went to I looked up like a nerd. I just Googled nerdy shop near me, and I found a place in North Canton that sells like comic books and toys and shit. And so I found these little like Hot Wheels cars that were designed after like Star Wars characters, which were really cool. And I got some. I got them like a Tie Fighter and a an X-wing like model and stuff. They just had a bunch of cool stuff. They had an original Optimus Prime too, like the one I had when I was little, and I really wanted to buy it, but I didn't. But
I
it's
bet
nice
it was
just to be
super
able.
expensive also.
It was only like $40. It wasn't too bad,
Oh.
but I mean, it wasn't in a box or anything. It was just loose. But just like that, when you leave a big box store, they don't care. If anything, they're checking if you stole anything. And even if you stole anything, most of the time they don't care. Um, when you leave a small business after you've bought something, they do a little dance because they made a sale, which means they can get dinner that night. As a girl that used to run a small business, I ran a manufacturing company, but it was, when we sold stuff, it was, when we made a big sale, we would go out and celebrate, and you don't see that at big companies. If you can buy local, please do. Uh,
Yeah.
Shop small if you can. It's that way you're taking money out of the big box and then putting it into the local. And a lot of times the pricing is very similar. I mean, when I ran the manufacturing company, I actually set pricing to make it so I set minimum advertised pricing on our products to make it so the big retailers couldn't undercut the little ones. So someone that
Mm.
had a small auto parts store could buy our products and sell them for the same amount that uh, like Fastenal or someone was selling it for,
Oh,
or I
yeah.
guess Fastenal's a bad example, but like O'Reilly Auto Parts or something.
Yeah.
So then a lot of manufacturers do that. They have minimum advertised price. So you will find the same pricing a lot of times in the small store and in the big store. So if you have time to do the research, I know not everyone does. And I know real life is it's hard to do all this stuff, especially if you're a parent and you're in survival mode. But if you have time to do it,
Right.
if you have the ability to do it, please focus on um, moving your money away from corporations and to individuals. Because trickle down economics is bullshit. There's no
Hmm.
trickle down. There never has been, there never will be. So the only way to do that is to support your fellow humans. Um, yeah, there's my soapbox.
I love it. I appreciate it. Um, And then I think I'll just close this out by saying thank you for joining us for this episode.
Thank you.
For everybody who's listening, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. Because you can pretty much find us everywhere, right?
Mhm.
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, yeah,
We're
everywhere.
everywhere. So,
Yeah, like you
and
can't get away from us.
on social media, you can find us on Instagram as well. We have an Instagram account. I'm not as active on it as I should be. I I don't have a TikTok for us yet, just because again, I'm an elder millennial. I've talked about this in previous episodes. I can't figure that shit out. So, but I know I
Uh,
need to because we really need to grow this show. But it's
yeah, I've been doing pretty well on TikTok. I could take that
yeah.
on for the
I
show. We can talk about that off air.
Okay, we can talk
But
about that. Um, but yeah, and we have a Patreon. You can support us either through our Patreon, which is on our website, or you can support us right through Buzzsprout, which is also on our website. There's two different ways that you can support us, depending on where you want your money to go. So, and it does help. The show is entirely self-funded. I am taking much more control of the show now. I'm as primary host, in addition to being EP. So it's my money every month going out, and I would, especially for someone that doesn't have a job, that's kind of hard. So the more help, if you love the show, please send us $5 a month. It's not that much. It's less than a coffee, and it can go a long way to helping me keep producing this. So I want to keep doing this week after week as long as I possibly can. We're going to be changing the format of the show here soon. We're going to be moving away from this like larger host thing and doing more of a format like what you see here, where you'll have me as your host every week, and then we're going to be bringing up topics and current events. If there's some stuff going on, we'll talk about that. Then second half of the episode will the first half of the episode will just be kind of like shooting shit. Second half of the episode we'll cover the topics or have a guest. So if we have a guest, then the first half we'll talk about what we're going to talk about with the guest. You know, your typical podcast, what you
right.
hear with podcasts. So I'm hoping that would be a little bit more popular. So
Yeah. Well, and sustainable for you because that
yeah, that
matters
too.
too.
The co-hosts that you know and love are still around, but
Yeah.
that way we can work with their schedules a little bit better, because they're all working professionals, and a lot of my trans brothers and sisters are honestly exhausted and depressed and stressed, and you only have so many spoons. So yeah, that's how the
Yeah.
show's gonna be moving forward here. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Do you have any parting words?
No, I would say just support trans people,
Please do.
support people safely.
Hmm.
And if you're not sure how to do that,
Ask us.
well, yeah, just ask.
Hmm. Ask a
Um,
trans person.
yeah,
Or ask us on the show, our
right.
website.
Or ask if you're afraid of seeming like a total ass in front of a person who's uh, lived experience as trans, then ask an ally because
Hmm.
that's what we're here for too.
Yeah,
Because like you just said, right, like
we only
fatigue
have
is a
so many
real
spoons.
thing.
Yeah,
And to me, and hopefully to everybody else, part of being a good ally is letting our trans brothers and sisters live their best lives without being super exhausted by having to explain their lived experience all of the time.
yeah. We a lot of times we want to say Google it, but the problem is based on your search history. If you Google it, it's going to bring up one way or another. Either it's going to be helpful or it's going to hurt us. So just based on
Right.
your
So yeah, so
search
if you
history.
want to ask an ally,
Hmm.
that's what we're here for.
Or there are trans people like me who will answer questions. Just be
Yeah.
polite about it, please. So,
Yeah.
some of us are very open, like myself, very open. And some of us are not. Some of us you don't even know are trans. So, but
Yeah.
never assume. So, yeah, that's some good advice. So, thank you so much for joining us.